All right, let's have this conversation now. It seems Finance Minister Enoch Godongwana is making good on his promise that he will show a bit of tough love to state-owned entities. There was expectation that he would allocate new financial support for Transnet, among other entities, but some were left disappointed as there was no new allocation for this particular entity. Let's now have a conversation with Masela Nhlapo from the African Rail Industry Association, and she's the CEO there. Thank you so much for your time. I mean, there's been quite some mixed reaction from people who are saying that, you know, while you need the state-owned entity like Transnet to work, there are others who are saying show it a bit of tough love, but others are saying without support, it cannot. Where do you lean towards?
Thank you very much for having me here. I think that Transnet may have been unfairly dealt with because they have a developmental mandate, but that mandate is not funded. So we expect them to make profits out of a mandate that it's not funded. And I think that the role of government in this instance, that providing a guarantee, but also government lawmakers using their powers to enable an environment that will support the turnaround that we want to see within transport and the logistics sector in general. And it's important not to look at the matter as a Transnet matter only, but the entire logistics sector, because it talks to each other. So we need to make sure that there are laws in place, of which the rail policy is there. In December, the logistic roadmap was approved by Cabinet. So now we are at a very critical stage of implementation, and we need to move very quickly. We cannot afford to lose jobs in the mining industry and anywhere else. We cannot afford to do that.
And before we even get to the turnaround plan and what this means then for the plan, I'm keen to hear your thoughts on this one. I mean, the minister's saying that, you know, the only people that are calling for another possible bailout, you know, for Transnet are the people that are owed by Transnet. How do you view that statement?
I think their businesses, they get owed. I also think it's important that to realize that Transnet has assets that can be utilized in order to generate revenue and pay their debts. And but government, in my view, through the National Logistic Crisis Committee and what it has produced with the roadmap, working very closely with Treasury, DOT, business, there's no any other way. This is the only thing that will save us as South Africans and the South African economy. Nothing else is more important than us surviving.
Where does it put the turnaround plan that we saw to try and turn around not only Transnet but the logistics sector? We also saw that guarantee when it comes to debt in December, but others were saying that you know, there should be a little bit more assistance here in order to try not to put the turnaround plan at risk. And I wonder then what happens now if there's no new allocation to that turnaround plan?
We use what we have. The government cannot take where there's no money, but the government can use its powers with regard to regulation, adopting new legislation. For an example, there is an intent by government to establish a rail leasing company. That leasing company would then use another international instrument, which is the Luxembourg Rail Protocol to the Cape Town Convention, that you would then use that leverage to invite in private funding, including the labor market, where they have investment arms that they need to come in and invest. So any investor would want to have some form of certainty that their money is safe. So through that international protocol, which is coming into effect on the 8th of March, we have ratified. We just need to complete the process to make sure that there are pockets of money that are made available through legislation, through policies. That enabling environment must exist. we use what we have, and what we have is the guarantee. What else do we have? The power of lawmakers.
And as private players in this space, because we've also seen that a collaboration has been talked about over time, and to also open the space more towards private players, how then does this development make you, feel? Are you becoming more confident in order to try and secure your space and your role in the sector? Or does this then make a little bit of investors nervous to say that private players possibly should hold off to try and partner with the sector?
I think where the rail industry and us as area, we are not too concerned that the money availability is not being made available. If the enabling environment is created, then there is certainty, and we move with speed and implement the roadmap that will then release private funding. But the terms have to be acceptable to the investors. And I think that it's time that we recognize and identify where the money may come from. For instance, we have the PAC, money could come from there. We have the labor, the unions, they have investment arms, money could come from there. And I think that when we say private sector, it will be private funds, but coming from entities and individuals within South Africa that have the best interest of South Africa at heart.
And I suppose then, as the minister says, that now they are in talks with the entity to make sure that, it continues to sustain itself, because ultimately that's what we want, SOEs who are able to sustain themselves. For you then as IRA, what becomes the one priority that you would say government needs to look at right now in these talks for Transnet to be able to sustain itself?
It's important that the National Logistics Crisis Committee, the road freight, is implemented immediately, not next week. Because that then would mean that Transnet would be in a position to start having engagement with private sector and to bring in the resources that are required. Transnet is full of hard-working men and women that wants to work in the best interest, but we need to support them. If the money is not there, we need to find other ways to support them and recognize the hard work that they do. So implementation of the policy, the framework is there. We now have to move. We need to save millions and millions of jobs today, not next week.
Listening to what you're saying then, implementation and no longer talking. It's time to now do. Thank you so much, Masela, for coming through. It's always a pleasure to have people in studio because online sometimes gets a bit too much, but thank you. Thank you for coming to the studio. That was Masela Nhlapo, CEO of the African Rail Industry Association.